yourself out there does pay off. Sometimes it felt like you're doing all of these things and is anything ever gonna work? And what I found is that those connections, those people that you help, the things that you invest in do come back to you. I always knew that I wanted to start a company. I had a lot of small, not failed attempts, but let's say short-lived companies that I started. And it was really about 5 years ago that my journey into the world of fundraising and venture capital and a more traditional way of looking at startups actually started. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I wish I knew when I was sitting in your seats and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. I'm going to go through 25 lessons learned. So the first lesson is that venture funding is not success. If you're reading the headlines, if you're looking at TechCrunch, if you're looking at BetaKit, it's always 30 million raised, 100 million raised, 500,000 raised, and very quickly it can get into your head that that's what your objective is in starting your business. But the truth is that that is not the reason that you're starting your business. And while it might be a positive signal to show the world that you're progressing by raising money, in the end, you need to build strong business fundamentals, and that is you successfully building your business. Don't get caught up in the glitz and glamour of fundraising. That's not what startups are all about, even if it's what the media will like to tell you. The second one, growth happens one customer at a time. A lot of times in the early stages, you like to think that you're going to put your website up there, you'll get a little bit of media, and the customers are just going to come. But really, it is at the beginning one customer at a time, one conversation at a time. And even if they're coming to you just through your website, those are your first beta testers. They're going to give you the most information about the product and what you've put out there. And I wish I had known getting into this that I shouldn't have been avoiding in the earliest days, one-on-one contact with my customers. I thought that that was unscalable. I thought that was the way to build a small business, not a big business. But I think as an early stage founder, you need to dive in and be very willing to be very hands-on in the early stages. Number 3, raising venture capital means you have a boss. Whether it's your board or your VC, you might have gotten into this game for entrepreneurial freedom, but the truth is that that's not what it's going to be like once you raise venture capital. And that can be okay. Managing stakeholders can have a lot of positive impacts on the business, but if you got into this so that you could go out there and do whatever you want and have this free life as an entrepreneur, venture capital and really any form of equity-based financing is probably not for you because you will be reporting to those people on your cap table. Number 4, you'll give up 10 to 30% of the company each time you raise a round. So I say this because I used to think that maybe if I raise a little bit of money, I'm giving up a little bit less of the company. Maybe if I raise $5 million, then I'm going to be giving up more of the company because I'm raising so much more money. And the truth is that in the world of venture capital, it's not actually how it's looked at. And whether you're raising a $500,000 round, a $2 million round, a $10 million round, you're probably giving up 10 to 30% of the company to those investors. For the investors, it's about ownership. And it really, when you're looking at the amount you want to raise, you need to think about how much you need. How much is feasible for, let's say, the next 18 months to get you through your next milestone as a company, to get you to the next level. And raising too much money can actually be a kiss of death for a company because you'll spend way too quickly. You'll often spend on a lot of the wrong things. So measured growth and understanding that you know what you're going to do with that money is really important. And if you're non-technical, you don't need to stay that way. So I came out of a business school background. I wanted to start a tech startup. I was going to run the business and the marketing side of things, which is ultimately what I went on to do. But I was running a tech business. And in order to do that, you need to work with developers, you need to work with your co-founders, you need to be able to have pretty in-depth conversations about what you're building, what the competition is doing, and how you can succeed in this market. And in order to do that, you do need technical skill. I ended up going to a number of different boot camps myself, whether it was for front end or Rails, which is what we were built on, just so that I could have coherent conversations with the developers on my team, with my co-founder, and feel confident that I knew what was going on. I think that a lot of people who are non-technical overestimate how hard it is to get a grasp on some of the fundamentals. You need to be willing to dive in there, and I promise it'll make managing your team, and it will give you a lot more credibility when you're out there trying to recruit developers. Number 6. Founder vesting agreements really matter. So what I'm talking about here is that, let's say you had a co-founder and you had a 50-50 equity split on day 1. If you end up going ahead and starting this company and one of you walks away 30 days in, if you don't have a vesting agreement, that person could technically walk away with 50% of the company. If you have a vesting agreement, typically you don't actually earn those shares for the first year. You actually have what is called a 4-year vesting agreement, usually with a 1-year cliff. So if you walk away after a year, you get a fourth of your shares. If you walk away after 4 years, then you get all of your shares. And this is really, really important because as much as you might think this is your best friend, and there's absolutely no way anything could go wrong, things go wrong, and you need to be prepared for those instances. So vesting agreements, have the conversation early. 7, keep clean financial statements. You'll never know when financing is necessary, when the company is being approached by an acquirer and you need to be able to provide financial statements. Scrambling and trying to get all that information together can be an absolute pain in the ass. So please keep clean financial statements, get help if you need it. And everyone needs to sign an IP assignment agreement. I think that in the end, we probably had we only at the time had 9 employees when we sold the company, but I think we had about 50 IP assignment agreements. So 50 people that had touched our product, our design, something about our company in some way during the time that we were building it. It's incredibly important that those people give you rights to what you're building. It'll come up during financing, it'll come up during selling the company. It's really, really important that you get those agreements signed. A higher valuation is not always better. And what I mean to say here is that if you raise at, let's say, a $30 million valuation, you're going to be incredibly hard-pressed to accept that $9 million acquisition offer that we got because your investors won't let you take it. And even if that $9 million that we talked about earlier is life-changing money that you want and that was your goal as an entrepreneur, if you raise a valuation way higher than that, it's just not on the table anymore. So really think about your goals and what you would be willing to sell for and what you're doing this for when you accept a valuation. And do your own media. We've had a lot of luck with media, but I think a huge part of that for us was that we actually did it ourselves. I was able to build relationships with reporters, and those relationships got stronger and stronger over time, meaning that when we had a launch, it was really easy to reach out and be able to get coverage. And it's hard at the beginning, but it's not going to get any easier if you outsource it. But if you put in the time and you start talking to those reporters early on, 5 years later, you're going to realize you have this whole network and that launches have become a lot easier. Number 11, early stage funding is all about optics. It is about human psychology, and what motivates people is generally what an early stage investment is about. Do they like you as a person? Do they trust you? Are their friends investing? All of these things are what the most of early stage financing is based on. Again, merits, that's what we all want it to be based on, but in the end, that's actually not really how it works. There's a lot of back channeling in venture capital. Usually an investor, especially in Canada, they're all so connected. They all talk to each other. You're going to one meeting, and the next night they're going to be out for coffee talking about your company, behind your back or in the back channel. And what you need to do is you need to understand what those networks are. Find people who are on the inside that can tell you what the feedback is from the investor community in a more open way. Because it's really hard to get that honest feedback right in the meeting, but if you work the back channel, you can figure out what people are saying. And always stay for the after party. So most of the most important conversations that have happened in my business career, from our funding to selling the company, all happened in very casual settings. When you're at a conference, when you're at a class, generally it's fairly formalized conversation. It's not till you get to dinner or the bar that the conversations really light up and that you actually make deep personal connections with people. So I remember I waited around for an hour hour after it was the Relay Ventures AGM that they held down in Mountain View. And I was just waiting and waiting, knowing that there was going to be some gathering of people at the Four Seasons at some point in time. So I waited, and finally the Scotch and cigars started. And they were all outside, and that was the most interesting part of the entire event for me. So hang around, wait for the after party. 14 Canadian investors totally idolize US investors. We talked a little bit earlier about working your local network, and that's a great way to raise financing, and it's true, they're way more likely to get checks from your local investors than from international investors. But if you can play the international investors off the Canadian investors, the Canadians will be way more likely to write checks faster. I found that every single time I flew to the Valley, the Canadian investors just got more and more interested in what we were doing. They didn't even know what we were doing in the Valley. They just assumed it must be talking to investors and that they were missing out on something. So this dynamic was really interesting for us when we were raising money. And if it's not a yes, it's a no. Investors don't really know how to say no sometimes. They'll tell you, with better traction, maybe in 2 months, go find a co-founder. All of these different things are different ways of saying no, but they're too socially awkward to find a way to say it to you. Or if they're Canadian, they're more likely not wanting to say no because they don't know if you're going to go get US money and then they want to be in the deal. So if it's not a yes, it's a no, move on, don't waste your time. And later stage funding is hard. You need to try to get profitable. I think it's Paul Graham who said that treat the money that you raise as the last money you'll ever raise. Focus on traction, focus on profitability. Right now, the funding landscape, I think, great companies will always find money, but the funding landscape is getting harder. And there's more and more traction required in order to attract the Series A capital because they have so many options of all these seed-funded companies that are looking for the Series A capital, and there's just not enough to go around. So if you want to have your destiny in your hands, get profitable, have revenue, and be able to dictate your own story. Number 17, higher prices, higher revenue. It seems a little bit straightforward, but one thing that I learned was we started off by selling really, really cheap, and the amount of time and effort that was going into each sale, if we had just been selling a much higher price, we probably would have had way higher revenue. We just guessed that people weren't necessarily willing to pay, and usually entrepreneurs, many entrepreneurs at least, aren't willing to ask for the highest price and see if people will cringe. You're sort of like, okay, do you think you'd pay this much? So try raising your prices. See how much you can actually get from your customers. The bigger the check that you're getting from your customers, the fewer sales you're going to have to make. So really push the boundaries as much as you can on that. And going to the Valley will change you. There's an energy to Silicon Valley that's absolutely incredible. There's a network there that's amazing. I highly recommend that even if you want to base your company here in Toronto, which I think is amazing, there's a ton of benefits to that, you need to go feel what it's like to be in the Valley. Just book a flight, go down there, hang out at co-working spaces, hang out at coffee shops, and go right up and down. Go from Mountain View to Palo Alto, hang out right downtown San Francisco, and I think you'll come back with a totally different view of your business. And I worked in the hardware space for a little while, so if you are in the hardware space, you're building physical product, go to Shenzhen. See what's happening there. It's absolutely incredible to just see an assembly line pushing off millions and millions of products. It'll change the way you think about your own manufacturing, the way you think about building your product. So everyone go to San Francisco if you're starting a startup, and if you're starting a hardware startup, get on a plane and go to Shenzhen. Number 20, crowdfunding is a science. Crowdfunding is an amazing way for particularly physical product companies to fundraise and be able to actually prove traction to investors. It's often possible for you, if you have a successful exit or an incredible background of your team, to just raise money based on a big idea. But often, if you're an unproven founder, even if you think that you have everything together, it's going to be really, really, really hard for you to raise without some sort of traction. Crowdfunding has given hardware entrepreneurs this opportunity that they can actually prove out even before spending a lot of money. But crowdfunding is a total science. There are stats like if you don't raise 32% of your funding on day one, you're not going to succeed. If you have a team, you're like 150% more likely to succeed afterwards. Let's say you raise $500,000 in 1 month of your crowdfunding campaign. It's going to take you 6 to 18 months to match that 1 month of sales in your pre-orders that will continue on your website afterwards. So I actually wrote a book on all of this. So if you are going to do crowdfunding, there's a whole lot of best practices that you should check out. Number 21, there are no magic bullets. And we like to idolize different investors, different accelerators, but even Y Combinator is not a magic bullet. There are companies coming out of Y Combinator all the time, many great friends of mine, that still struggle to raise money. It's not this magic thing that's going to mean you're coming out and you're raising money and it's flying in from everywhere. Sure, the top companies coming out of each batch might have that experience, but it's not universal. So don't think that the grass is always greener on the other side. The truth is that everyone has to run their own race, their own battle. So you're not missing out on something incredible. Everyone as an entrepreneur has to work hard. So there's no magic bullets, and just get at it and get working. Number 22, the people beside you today are what I'd call your cohort. So it's been incredible for me to see the people that started their companies around 5 years ago, around the time I did. We ended up going through the same accelerators. We raised funding around the same times. We were on panels together. Now we're all investing together. It's really been incredible to see us basically grow up together in the startup space. So I highly encourage you to get to know the other entrepreneurs that are at similar stages as you and grow together, because I think it's an incredible network to build for your business, but also for your sanity. And number 23, putting yourself out there does pay off. I went to a ton of events, took a ton of meetings, did every sales call I possibly could, and sometimes it felt like you're doing all of these things and is anything ever going to work? And what I found is that those connections, those people that you help, the things that you invest in do come back to you. And when I trace back the path of how our company got acquired, it goes back to me getting on a plane and going to some random event in San Francisco that I probably shouldn't have gone to, and then accepting a hackathon judging event where I met the same person from the same company who took me to his launch party, who introduced me to his boss, who took me to Shenzhen, who then acquired our company. And if I hadn't gone to that one random San Francisco event, all of that would never have happened. So I think that you take a lot of these chances, and eventually you'll look back and see how it all fit together. 24, balance is lost gradually. I always used to hear people talking about work-life balance, and oh, no, I'm fine. And I think that slowly, one beer night at a time, one not going to the gym at a time, my life did gradually deteriorate, but it was so slow that I didn't notice it happening. And then we sold the company, and I think it took me a year to recover. I was fried, and I didn't realize just how fried I was. I didn't want to go out and meet with people. I was not eating well. I was literally sick, and it's told me just how important it is to maintain those things as you are growing your business. So maintain balance and watch yourself carefully, because it might not feel like you don't have it, but it'll slowly deteriorate over time. And finally, be a cockroach. And what I mean here, one of my friends once told me, wow, Katherine, you really are a cockroach. And I was like, wow, that seems like an incredibly mean thing to say to someone. And they're like, no, cockroaches never die. And that's a compliment, you just never die. And I'm like, yeah, cool, okay, I never die. And I think that you, as an entrepreneur, as a startup, you need to not die. You need to refuse to die as a business. There will be ups, there will be downs. You have to find a way through it, and that's the only way you're going to be successful. You can't be successful when you're dead.